Okay, good evening. Hi. I'm delighted you're here to talk to us this evening. But Gabby, I want to talk to you to start just at the beginning, and just let's look at your label as it began in sort of February 2015. Am I correct? What did you think the world needed that you were going to deliver with the Gabriela Hearst label?
So I'll go a little bit further than that. I've been working in design since 2002. I worked for another designer, and then I worked in a showroom doing sales, but I launched my first collection, my first brand, Candela, in 2004.
Right.
And it was a contemporary brand, and I started with 2 other partners, with an investment of $700 each. So it was really, still screening in Brooklyn, freezing in the cold. It was really a startup, and we got it to a certain level that I could live off it. So then my father passed away in 2011, and I come from Uruguay, from a ranching background, and so I spent my whole life trying to get away of it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, when I was with my father's passing, I had to take over his ranch. So,
And was that something that you had already factored into it as a possibility in your life, or was that just...
It was going to happen.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize it was going to happen so soon.
And tell me what the responsibility of a ranch was. I mean, what was on it?
It's 6,000 head of cattle,
Right.
10,000 sheep, horses, a lot, people
And
that
how
work
was
for
your animal husbandry skills? I mean, had you developed any as you were growing up, or?
But that's the thing. If you're my mom's size, my family has been doing that for 200 years. So
Yeah.
it kind of is in your system in
Yeah.
a way. Not that, it like in the practicality, but you can actually think about it and understand it because you're born with it. It's what both my parents did, and also my stepfather. So I went to take care of the ranch, still living in New York. I would go...
Still doing the screen printing in Brooklyn?
Still doing that.
Yeah.
Still suddenly I had 2 jobs, and it was, going to Uruguay 5 to 6 times a year from New York is like, from door to door is 24 hours, and sometimes I would go for 3 days. And but then I started to really love what my father had been doing, which is like certified organic, grass-fed cattle, merino, and starting to think that there was a disconnect between what I was doing in New York and the ranching, and that's where I thought I should take these values that we learned, utilitarian. You don't throw anything. Like we will have a can of paint, you don't throw it, because that can of paint you can use it to wash a horse. I mean, you have to think remote, like 2 hours away from the closest town. So like, don't have a heart attack. Okay, it's like that type of. It's really, really remote, and you just see green, and it's a lot of isolation, but you're in contact with nature, so everything gets reclaimed and reused. And for example, I was telling my foreman, which trained with my dad. He was working with my dad since he was 18. It was like you would go in the bathroom, would have like, those tanks of water with hot water, and you would put the shower, and it would be like 1 drop of water going tick, tick, tick. And sometimes I wouldn't shower for 2 days. I'm like, I'm not, because in the winter it's cold. So I asked him, like, could we change it? Could we put a new water tank? And it's like, his answer wasn't yes. His answer first was like, let me think where I can put the actual water tank that we have first.
Okay.
So that mentality is in the system.
Yeah.
When you are off the grid, and we've been using solar panels since they came out, and when you're off the grid like that, your brain functions in another way.
Okay, so how do you get from there then to a luxury label? Because they don't necessarily lend themselves to...
From the outside, but in the inside is very similar.
Right.
Because it takes craft and it takes time for breeding.
Yeah.
There's cycles that you have to follow.
Yeah.
You have to know from the grass on what's the mineral, because it's it's grass-fed, organic, so you don't give the animals anything. It's all about maintaining the earth. How many animals can you have per hectare, so it's all about understanding the system and quality. At the end of the day, in the ranch and with Gabriela Hearst, my goal is to bring quality.
Yeah.
This is not...
so what did you launch with? What did the label launch with?
With shoes and ready to wear.
Okay. And that was so right from the get-go, it was clothes.
I've always done ready-to-wear and shoes, and so I wanted to launch with that and have it very clear, and my passion for fabrics and materials that.
And how much of the merino do you use in the collection, and how much do you use now?
Merino is a very high fiber that we use. We use a lot of cashmere, merino silks. We use natural fibers. But I would say that merino is a good 30 to 40% of our collection. Yeah.
So going back to like the initial question, which was sort of what did you feel that you were fulfilling with the brand that you brought to market? What did you think? What kind of woman did you want to serve, and also what kind of what was missing in the market? Do you think that your label hopefully has sort of fulfilled?
Yeah, I think that I really thought about it. It wasn't something that I jumped, because the world doesn't need another fashion brand. Let's be clear. It wasn't, but this is what I do and what I love to do, and I thought that there was a space there where things that were not so trends focused, because I don't really care about trends. We don't follow trends. It's more about pieces that are beautifully made, that will last forever, and then you'll have it, which is the same way I grew up in the ranch. My mom, for example, you have the ranch, you have your rustic gear, and then there were few good pieces you use when you clean up, right? And these pieces, there were not stores that you could go here, matches at Carlos Place. So the nicest thing you would do was like buy your European fabrics and then have your seamstress make them. Yeah. And essentially this is couture. So the standard of clothing that, for me, that I learned for clothing was pretty high. Yeah. So I'm always trying to achieve that resonance of how the clothes was made.
Yeah. And so what you were hoping to do with this then is sort of like imbue the idea of quality, the sense of like manufacture from sort of field to rack, as it were, and craft.
Support craft.
And also this kind of idea of that sustainable kind of culture that you'd grown up around, so that the fabrications, at least where possible, could be sustainable minded. I mean, sustainability is something I think which gets thrown around a lot at the moment in fashion. And I'm always a bit like, okay, but people are making clothes, and does the world need another sweater? So how do you, what have you done in terms of like your measures of making the brand as sort of as sustainably minded as you can?
So from the start, at the beginning, I came out and said, I don't want people to buy 10 sweaters. I want people to buy one sweater. And what I meant by that is I want people to buy one quality thing. I think, we have to, things became so easy to make, and that sometimes we start buying without conscious. Yeah. And I think that goes across everything, since you have a refrigerator. In New York, I don't know what the ratio is in London, but in New York, 1/3 of all the food gets thrown away.
There's also something on the radio this morning about 40% of all domestic appliances are built to go in the landfill anyway within 2 years. So yeah, we've got a problem.
We got a problem with consumption. And I think that from the beginning, I wanted to tune into like this code. And then there was no price strategy. It was like, this is what the fabric costs, this is what it's going to cost. It's like the transparency of it. This is the price because this is what it takes us to make a good product. Yeah. So.
And is that something that you feel that like the consumer still needs to understand? Because obviously when you're working in luxury and you're working with very, very kind of like beautifully crafted product, that is something that you do need to communicate. Like you've got to sort of like establish the worth of an object. Is that something that you...
I think sometimes in the majority of the cases it's apparent to the eye and to the feeling. When you put it on, you can feel the difference. And a friend of mine calls it, he said when the first time he saw our collection, he was like, it's honest luxury. You could see how it was being made and how it, there was a certain degree of transparency to it that you could understand. But there are certain things that you need to maybe explain. For example, I tried to stay away from viscose, and so we use this caddy that is actually silk and wool, and there's it's coming in the spring collection, and I fell in love with this fabric.
Yeah.
But most of the people associate Caddy with viscose,
right?
And that has a certain price point. So I kind of call it Caddy because people are going to associate. So it's a bit of like, sometimes there is an explanation that has to go through,
right,
but the majority of the time is very apparent.
So let's talk about your capsule collection, because you've been working on that for some time with Matches. It's entirely unique, but it's using sometimes some of the ideas and kind of obviously influences that have informed all of your collections. Where do you start with this capsule?
Matches very generously gave us the freedom to do what we wanted, and I like to do things that have meaning. So first of all, as going back to the values from the ranch, not throwing the can of paint, we looked at our stock of fabrics of what we had available, and especially for a capsule, which is a limited edition of units, is perfect. So we look at our stock of what fitted, and we created a story with that. The story is the main print, which is the Belmont Park races, which we like that connection between the thoroughbred horses, and I think that connection between New York and Ascot, the Belmont and the Ascot races are kind of parallel sister races. So I thought that would be an interesting connection to do. So it has the equestrian understanding of it, and so from there we built into the colors and the things that are traditionally from our brand, for example the herringbone stitching, but and the suiting.
I mean, suiting's been a big number for you. I mean, obviously we've been like looking at the news and watching sort of various footage. I seem to see women in public eye invariably wearing Gabriela Hearst suit. Do you have in mind a certain kind of client or a certain kind of woman when you're designing? Is she, and if so, who is she?
Well, I used to hear so long before launching G8, you have to clarify, you see your woman, you really, and with Gabriela Hearst, it really was quite crystal clear.
For you right from the start?
Yeah, it crystallized. I mean, maybe I'm a slow learner, but it took me a while, but finally it crystallized. So it's this dynamic woman that's a professional that wants beautiful things, doesn't want to call too much attention, but still wants to be interesting, worldly traveler, and then that was like our assumption of who we were trying to target, right? People that love quality and craft. And then when we start to, as we grow and we start to look at our client base, we realize that they're professionals, they're lawyers, there's all these, dynamic women. Yeah, and they are serious people. Do you think you're a serious label? You think I'm serious?
I don't know. I mean, you've obviously got these kind of playful elements, but it's quite, it feels to me like if you put on sort of Gabriela Hearst outfit, you are empowered, to use everyone's favorite word in fashion. But certainly, there's a strength, or there's a power in the clothes, which I think is, maybe it's a quiet power or a transparent power or whatever it is, but it's femininity with an edge, I think, which is quite a seductive proposition in this day and age.
No, I think that's one of the intentions for sure. The main intention is that you don't have to think too much about it, that you feel empowered, that you can go about your day and you're like, and the suit that's why I loved launching Gabriela Hearst. We launched with suits, and the first one was based on a suit from my mother because I wanted to do tailoring so bad. I feel very comfortable in a blazer or in a suit because you're never underdressed or overdressed. It's kind of it works. So I think that was like a key element to launch with, and women tend to feel very empowered when they're wearing a suit, but I like when the clothes just really kind of frame the person. I like my clothes to just be there, but the person come out. Like I don't want it to be like
overwhelmed.
Oh yes, and you're wearing Gabriela Hearst. You don't know exactly what you're wearing. Like,
but I mean, say that as I tried on your pink and sort of like little micro check blazer suit, and I was like, okay, it's quite a sort of like grabby. It's certainly like attention seeking if you want to. So like I guess it's like balancing that kind of what buttons you kind of prepared to push or that you want to.
I like sensuality and engaging, but not like screaming. Like I rather take a second look.
And then also because you've obviously got quite a strong collection of evening wear as well. Like, do you think women today are still dressing in terms of day to evening, or do you think that we're kind of all things at all times and we just have to you know, are you a 24-hour dresser, or are you a go home, have a bath?
I am a 2 outfits per day. One
I remember
outfit,
once Gabby saying to me, it's either my hair or my teeth. I brush one or the other, so the hair had to go. And I was like, okay. You're like, a woman who doesn't have much time.
No, that's not, that's like, you know, time, as I said before, is the ultimate luxury. But going back to your question about, I thought of the wardrobe, and I thought of the life of this woman, and most of it is day work. Then there's the weekend wear, and then there's some cocktail. And once in a while, you have your evening pieces, the wedding, there's certain events. But evening for me translates not to a full-on length. It just has a more of a modern touch to, like, maybe it's an ankle length. And so I'm trying to always play with evening in a way that it still feels that you would be okay in a formal environment. But if you had to bring it down to another place, you could.
And do you think as well that's because you design accessories and bags and ready-to-wear, you've always done you've been fully kind of categorized from the get-go? Do you think of somebody in terms of like head to toe all the time, or is it that they...
No, I don't think on head to toes. I think I design different categories, and this is where people are like actually surprised, the fact that I actually design all the different things, but I design them in different ways. Like the ready to wear and shoes, because we present collections of them. I kind of liaise them a little bit, right? But because the handbags is more of a free form for me, and the jewelry I design as I see in my subconscious, though. So they don't necessarily, I don't launch the new handbag with the new collection. If it's ready, I'll put it. But if it still takes me 10 months to get.
Development is a massive feature of your kind of design life, though, isn't it? Like making sure the prototype works, seeing it through. You don't then just say, the bags that you'll be selling in Matches, they'll be only available in here. In store, you still believe in a kind of waiting list and making people wait. I mean, is that a huge part of the luxury experience, do you think? I mean, because it's such a debate today as to whether, you should be able to buy it now, or whether it's about patience is its own kind of seduction.
And I think people sometimes think it's like, oh, it's a clever strategy, and no, it's just like it's the time takes you to make product like the one that we do, like in the Diana bag, like all the hardware is done by hand. It just takes us a long time. So what having the wait list provide us was to get a sense of which colors we should produce for our clients. So we, collect a few, and then we make them. And the Mitchell that will be here based on the Tiffin system, it's like an engineer thing. You have hidden buttons that opens, then it becomes a clutch. It's like a little bit of a puzzle. So it's not, they're complicated. They're not so they need time. And that you can't, as I say, we always talk with Giuseppe, our CEO, a Parmesan cheese takes 18 months the least. So something.
You're the Parmesan cheese of luxury.
Why not? I'll take it. I'll take a Parmesan cheese.
We've got 1 minute before I want to ask people to give us some questions. I was just going to ask you one thing though. Obviously, you talked about your family and the ranch, but obviously there's the other part of your family, which is the Hearst part. How much of that informs what you do in terms of design? Because I know there's been like a rosebud dress in the past. There's these little kind of touches. You told me once before, like you were like, oh God, do I launch with that name? Or how much of that has been a kind of a passport to success, and how much of that has been, where do you reconcile it in your head?
So when we were going to launch, I was thinking of launching with my maiden name, Perzulti. The name of my father is Italian. It's made in Italy, made complete sense. And a friend of mine was like, I love your last name, but I can't pronounce it, and the majority of the people cannot pronounce it, so just call it Gabriela Hearst, okay? And actually it makes sense, because not everybody's aware of, in America, people maybe of a certain age group are more aware of the Hearst last name and the historical value of it, but to other people it's just a shorter last name. And I knew if that the product was gonna speak for itself, it didn't matter. So I thought definitely it was a good call, because people still write my name with 2 L's, and it's 1 L, Gabriela. So
that's a challenge enough for everybody.
I will not mention the retailer that we launched with, but every client was with double L, and I was like, can you imagine if I had been pursued, it would be like 3 T's. But you know, it's my husband has, he's my partner and he has helped me a lot in the project. So I always say I'm the Gabriela and he's the Hearst.
Yeah.
The most transparent.
Very good. Right, I'm going to open up the floor to ask anyone who has any questions. So let's see a huge show of hands, please. Yeah, hi.
Hello. Thank you for being here. It's lovely to meet you guys. What do you think? I know you said you designed the jewelry as well, and I really love your jewelry, and I think it's really special compared to like other designer jewelry I see. So what do you think is the role of jewelry in a woman's style, or what are you thinking about when you design it?
Well, I'll tell you.
Just
I didn't design this one. Everybody, because I love jewelry so much and I have such respect for jewelry, a lot of people that know me said you have to make jewelry, but I never felt the need to make jewelry till I saw this painting in the Prado Museum last year of Quentin Massey, the presentation of the Christ, and I saw it and I was like, that's the jewelry I want to make. So, you know, I copied the jewelry from a painting from the 1500s, so it's if the 1500s is not copying, okay? It's inspiration.
And is that different from how it might be otherwise? Did the jewelry come from a different place entirely in your head, or is it?
So I started with that.
Yeah.
So I did the chains, the gold chain, just like the men were wearing, and then, you know, the thick rings.
Yeah.
But I said, I don't want to use gemstones. I want to use marble and malachite and lapis and stones. So they're all made out of gold, but I didn't want it to be precious stones. So the next iteration, which is like what I'm wearing now, I'm actually carving the stones and putting opals and another not so expensive stones, but still very interesting and special.
And sorry, I think because you were saying, what does it lend to a woman's style? Did you?
It adds to your personality, but I don't think it's an obligation. I think jewelry is like, you know, it has to be like more playful. It's not a dictator. I think it's like an extra.
An extra. Yeah. Hi.
Hi there. That was very interesting. Thank you. As a scientist, sort of doctor, well, I am a doctor, but scientist, I'm fascinated by your silver lining in your suits and things like that. How did that come about?
So this is, you know, we were talking with a friend, usually how things start, I'm talking with someone, and we were talking about the radiation from cell phones, and, you know, my sister is also a scientist at Cornell, and actually I wanted to ask her, like, can you measure the cell phones and, like, see the radiation? And so we were talking about this, and then I started to be very curious, and then I talked to another friend, and they knew about this fabric which NASA makes, which is the one that we're using for NASA uses it, and it's made in Germany. So this fabric is basically all silver, most of it silver, and it stops the cellular radiation from your phone. But at the beginning, I thought I was going to line all the pockets, and so I wrapped my phone with the fabric so you wouldn't have any incoming calls. So I was like, that's going to be a problem. So the whole part is to protect your reproductive organs on your, you know, sexy talk.
Just looking after your ovaries, ladies.
Yeah. That's the whole thing.
Isn't it also got microbial properties,
yes,
so that it actually also stops things smelling? Sorry.
Yes, that's another actually. But in the pockets, you don't have any. And you know this as a scientist that it took 25 years since they found out that X-rays were bad for pregnant women till it actually got implied. So my philosophy is, if I can't do something that improves the garment and it doesn't cause any damage to my client, then I'm going to try it if it does good.
But similarly, just on that same tack, I mean, scientifically, you've been investigating all sorts of different ways of using packaging, I mean, which is like a huge problem. And it's a scientific endeavor, I think, as much as it is an ecological one, right? Because you've got to develop you've got to work with whoever it is who's developing the compostable plastic kind of wrappers or whatever.
The TIPA, it was developed by these two Israeli women, which basically it's flexible packaging that composts in 24 weeks versus 500 years. So the goal for us as a company is that by April 2019, all our packaging is compostable.
That's 3 months. How's things going?
Good. Got the TIPA back, got the garment back, got the hanger and cover. Yeah.
She's on. Okay.
Yeah, the only problem, and I let it go out there if somebody have a solution, the only thing that I'm having a hard time is the heels. The heels of, I do cork, I can do cork. Cork is an amazing material to work with because I don't know if you know this, but you don't kill the tree, you just shave it. But the heel inside our shoes, that's plastic. But, so that one's the one that is up. But they are trying to do some with the corn type of
corn.
It's a corn.
I don't know. I have no idea, but I know what I know.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about.
Our scientific talk.
Yeah, exactly. Next question. I saw a hand. Yes. Hi.
Hi. So my question is about sustainability. And first of all, it's really beautiful to hear you talk about how much you care about sustainability. And it feels very authentic when you're talking about it. So I applaud you for that. But how do you balance that with the fact that you run a fashion brand and it's not an industry that's known for sustainability? So how do you reconcile those two things when you have X number of collections a year? You need to move merchandise to make a profit.
I think a lot about this. I have so many things to tell you. I think I occupy my brain all the time about this, on how to be more efficient. For example, we do a pre-fall collection, or even the matches capsule that you see here. We didn't produce any samples. We sketched them. We showed the collection in sketches in flat. So one of them is like finding alternative ways. Like our pre-fall collection is presented the same way. We actually don't do a pre-fall, we don't do a full collection, we sketch. And by now our clients actually trust us with what we can do. So I find existing fabrics, so I am obsessed with finding materials that are already in existence, that they were not created exclusively for me. You know, that saying of somebody's trash is somebody else's treasure. And in the level of materials that I am using, they're always prime materials, but for some other designer, that was not the right thing. You know, but if it works for my collection. So I'm a bit of a, how do you call it?
Upcycler?
Upcycler or a hunter. And there's so much business potential in being efficient and not being wasteful. So that's one of the things that I'm always thinking, okay, what is the best way to go about it? Because the frankness is that growth and economical growth and natural resources, it's a balance. You can't really, you have to be very careful. And so my main goal always is try to use the less natural resources possible. The way we sell the bags is because I was presented a wholesale plan. I've told you this, and it meant that I had to make the double amount of bags to make the same amount of money. So that didn't make sense from a sustainable point of view or a long-term view, which are my two main values. So yeah, I spend a lot of time of thinking alternative. You know, and again, going back to sustainable, I call it sustainable practices, because you start with something and at the beginning it may be challenging, and then you start, you know, getting warm up like any practice, and then you become better, and then you want another challenge and another challenge. And at the degree that I am now with what we're doing, I'm not satisfied. I always want to do more. And
I think you said something really good the other day when we were talking about how you like working with constraints and actually putting some sort of like kind of boundary around something and limiting the facility to do it. You find creatively freeing.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone would, but
I think it does fit creativity to have a little constraint.
Yeah. So putting these kind of like sustainability targets on, you found has been actually quite a good impetus.
And it's something that I care deeply, and it really puts me up at night, because really right now in the next 10 years is where the heavy lifting is, and we are a small company, you know. My idea is to do what we do, and hopefully the bigger guys can copy us. And I see ourselves as a little luxury laboratory where we are trying new theories, and not only in luxury, like, you know, we're a retail store, we don't have any mannequins, we don't have window displays, different things that we, you know, think that could be the future of where we're seeing our version of luxury.
I think we've got time for one more question, if you've got anyone there, any hands? Otherwise, I think we can say thank you very, very much. Oh, no, you've got one?
Hi, I was just interested to know what you did before 2004.
Before, I was working in a showroom. I used to represent different brands, and one of them was Le Coq Sportif. And the showroom, my boss, I didn't like my boss, and he fired me. Because they had this consultant firm that they came and I was like, you know.
You were consulted out of the door?
No, I basically, I said to them that I didn't like my boss.
Oh, wow, nice.
So I was out of there, and I remember calling my father and go like, should I? Because I already had started with Candela on the side, and then Le Coq Sportif had offered me to go work with them, you know, full time individually or start my own business. And my father was like, of course you go work for the company. I'm like, okay, no. So I basically, you know, left to do it on my own, and it was an interesting first year living in the West Village, maximizing your credit cards.
Do you think though that like just quickly, like as a sort of a future kind of creatives, do you think actually working within the system and doing the kind of working in a kind of office environment is actually quite a valuable experience when you're building your own business? I remember my boss that I hated it so much. I still feel like the experience was really, you know, I was doing sales, so I had to call, you know, like the clients and like deal with the late shipping and all these taught me of how to run the business side. And this industry, you can be as creative as you want, but if you do not ship on time and the product doesn't fit, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It really doesn't. So those two values, I'm like, to all the future designers, learn those two. What you don't know is that actually you'll be doing some sales upstairs now on the phones. Anyone who's got any questions, Gabriela is here to answer your calls. Okay. Probably I'm the better salesperson. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you.